in the building, and I don't see any exposures elsewhere that will be able to achieve our educational plan. And that we also have sustainability goals in which we will try to get this to be a net zero building. So with that, I think we'll get right into the program. I'm going to turn a little bit. Yeah, I was a teacher 50 years ago, and I had a deaf person in the classroom, and I didn't realize it the first year I taught. And I used to turn and talk to the blackboard. And boy, did I learn the hard way, you don't do that with a deaf person in the room. So pardon me if I turn around and I talk, that's just sheer habit. This is a site plan of both Trotter and Neary. And you'll see the driveway off of Parkerville coming in. This is the landfill. There's wetlands here. We'll see that in a minute. This is a stream that runs between Trotter and Neary. And you can flip it to the next slide. This is an overlay of the new school. And you'll see it is right close to where the existing school is. And over the next couple slides, we'll explain why we didn't build it out in the field and move it away, or just what those reasons were. Next one. This slide gets a little technical, but you've got the stream here. And there's a whole bunch of regulations that hit that stream. You've got a 200-foot river buffer. You've got several internal buffers. You can get into the 200 feet, but you have to create a reason why. There's a 100-foot setback that conservation has. And locating the school out in the field area out here certainly impacts those buffers. There's another wetlands down in this area, which don't have the 200 feet, but we did bring everything back so you can see where it impacts the site. The wetlands to the north, and I'll show a slide shortly showing you where they are. This is a rare thing for a developer to say. The large wetland area that goes north between Trotter and Parkerville up to the reservoir is our friend. It is a precious resource that really helps us to alleviate any difficulties from this particular site, and has a magnificent way of maintaining flows. All the flows from the landfill go north and east toward that wetlands, and all the ground flows come down into the bottom and then flow off into that wetlands. And it has a really high capacity of catching the water. And I'll show you that slide in a few minutes. When we were looking at the field area, we did some soil borings. Typically they're 15, 20 feet deep. And we just wanted to capture what was going on under. And you'll see down the side some of the descriptions, but these soil borings were done really in conjunction with locating the school over here. There's a later set that we tied to getting closer to the school, because if we were going to move the school to its current location, we needed to know what was going on in the soils underneath there. What we found out in the field area is what's called unsuitable fill. And unsuitable fill doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not fill that can support a building on top. And Personally, what I suspect happened is in the 60s when this school was planned, there was no Wetlands Protection Act. There were no 100-foot buffers around the wetlands. So this particular area was probably just filled. It's not where the landfill is. You'll see a slide later which outlines where the landfill was. It was an area that was probably low. It could have been wet in the 60s. We don't know. But it was just filled. And it was filled with sand, sandy material, not material that you could build a school on. So we determined pretty quickly that we'd have to remove fill in that area to build a school down about 6 feet over a couple acres, which would have cost us at least $2 million to do, and would probably have trucks going in and out of this site for a month getting that material out and bringing new material in. That's what transferred the school from the field back to where Neary School is. We did not see in the borings that we did at this location, we didn't see anything that we saw out in the field. It's still not great material, but we didn't see the same conditions that were out in the field. So I believe what they did near Neary is that they used a fill which at the time was suitable for that school. There is no evidence in the school that the foundation is cracked, although we haven't lifted the tiles to really determine it. But we don't see any, there wasn't any major settling, which tells us that what's there could be okay. We don't know, and that's still something in our contingency once we get into that foundation to figure out exactly what's there. More than likely, we still have to remove material to get our foundation structurally sound on the new school, but it's not going to be anywhere to the extent of what we proposed out in the field. This is the floodplain map by FEMA. What's in blue is the 100-year floodplain. And basically, if we get a 100-year storm, this is where you would expect to see flooding. Oddly enough, down in the far corner here is the 500-year map, which looks very odd. You would expect it to expand much further into the site, but it doesn't. And that's our friend to the north, the wetlands. That's a huge catchment area. And I always expected the 100-year flood to be worse at Neary's level, but it isn't. But we want to be as far away from that as we can. I believe the flood height is at 268, 268, which is feet above sea level. And the height of the foundation as proposed in the new school is 6 feet higher than that. So we're well outside the concerns of a 100-year storm and a 500-year storm. This does show you somewhat what's going on. This area here is Ken's Food out on Route 9. It's actually part of the area that drains all into that stream. It starts up at Crystal Pond area, goes under Route 9, comes into the big wetlands area in front of Ken's Foods, then it drains down into this large catchment area all back in here. So you can see the capacity of what is flowing in that area is pretty large. And that wetland seems to carry it very, very well. And so if you take a look at the next slide, this kind of tells you the underground drainage system. We do have pipes, drainage that goes off the site. And typically, some of it flows up here, but most of it flows down into this area and then back into here. And there is an open area here, there's a little pond here. All of it flows down into that area. It's not working properly. There's some ponding areas in blue that are shown on the map. And if you've driven down there, there's one standing pond down in this little area, which is the lowest part of the site. You can flip it to the next one. This is the current design of the new drainage system underground, pulling water both off the building and into a more concise system, again flowing back to exactly where it is. We need to comply to stormwater management through the Conservation Commission. In the next phase of our project, we go through all the normal committees and commissions, including the Board of Health on the septic, Conservation on the stormwater management plan. We're actually appearing before the Planning Board to go through some of these plans, I think on the 28th, but we'll go back to the Planning Board during the permitting process. But all of this is checked with the town and complies to both town standards. We are required to have detention basins, which are not there on site now. And I think there's two I can note. There's this area here and this area here, which are underground storage areas, so that the water comes into that area, gets stored and retained for a period of time, and then flows back out at its normal rate. So we don't overburden the wetlands, we contain it on site until it flows at a regular rate out. I just saw this design a few days ago. What it avoids, because one of the things we have is we have high groundwater, typically all throughout the site. Within, I'm going to say 2 to 4 feet down, you'll hit water. This avoids having a detention basin deep to capture all that water. But if it's too deep, we'd have standing water in it, which we don't want near a school. This avoids that issue because it takes it underground, leaves it underground, and then pushes it out of the system. So it's an added protection. This is a plan of the existing septic system. And the back of the building is up here. And basically it gets pumped out into this corner with the septic field way up top. This was put in 1997. We pump up. We have a forced main that comes from the tank up to the field, which is higher than the school. And we force the water into the field. The septic tank is not designed to, the septic field is not designed for the occupancy we're proposing. It's nearing its end anyway, so that we did and have done perk tests throughout the site too, and that was one of the early things we did to make sure that the site perks. So I won't get into the wells yet. You want to get into the perk testing on the next one?
The perk tests.
I think it's the next slide.
Yes, you're right.
Yep. This slide shows where we did some various perk tests. Up here, closer to the school, we actually did one way down there which totally failed, which is not surprising. What we've located in blue is a septic field that is somewhat down gradient to where the current one is. I believe we still have to pump up to it. But the site has two areas that perk test out here also originally worked. So that we do have a backup area that we could use. And the septic system can be designed to pick up the occupancy of 610 students. Here we are at the landfill, and what I'll do at this point is bring in Bill Cundiff and Tim Tees to talk about the landfill and its testing. And I'll just quickly explain that this outline, and you may have seen it earlier in one of the slides that it was outlined that way. This is the extent of the landfill area, but what was capped and what was determined in the 90s when the cap was put in place, that this was the area that had to be capped over. Yeah, we can bring that up. Just go back on.
So this shows where it is in relation to the proposed building.
Correct. And what we have here, note this little thing, which I keep reminding people that we have to constantly show it. There is an AT&T easement that runs through here at the bottom of the landfill. So it really restricts what's going on in that particular area. It's the same easement that crosses under Route 9 and runs down Parker. And it's if it's the same one that I bumped into in an area of Natick years ago, it's a pretty important fiber optic cable. So I just wanted to note that. The last thing is, after this, I'll go over some of the things that we did in the design of the school that further enhances the location as it pertains to the landfill.
I'm going to be looking this way a little more, but I'll be holding the mic so everybody can hear me. Hi, I'm Bill Cundiff. I'm the DPW superintendent. I've only been with the town for about a year and a half, so it's been a learning experience, particularly with the landfill, Lund Flat Field. As you know, the closure occurred about 2000, and as part of that closure, there was a field constructed on top of it, so that the cap is actually, standard thickness, but there's areas that are probably 5 to 8 feet above the cap that are soil fill for the fields. The DPW's role with the landfill is we're responsible for ensuring compliance with the DEP regulations, as well as the ongoing maintenance of the integrity of the cap. So, we hire consultants, in this case PAR, to come out and do their periodic inspections of the cap to make sure that it's continuous. If there's any maintenance needs, they have to actually submit that report to the DEP, and then the DEP makes sure we follow through on any deficiencies that might exist. Often we get maybe a groundhog digs a hole, we've got to fill that in. If there's an area that needs loam and seed, we do that, or regrading perhaps to make sure that the water has a positive sheet flow off the surface of the landfill. The whole name of the game with these landfill closures, think of a coffee filter. You want to keep that water from percolating through the waste to get to the groundwater. So when they cap this facility, they put a membrane over the top of the landfill, and that sheds the water and minimizes the amount of water that makes it into the waste. So the goal is to keep everything intact, and then over time, it will decompose and you'll get differential settlement occurring throughout the site that, again, we'd be responsible for maintaining. So in addition to those periodic inspections, PAR will go out and do their annual groundwater monitoring and quarterly gas sampling. If there's any, what we call hits, exceedances of the regulations, that's called out for in their reporting, and then those reports get submitted to the DEP and the Board of Health, and the DEP, and I just spoke with Greg Group from the DEP actually 2 days ago. He did a surprise inspection, and yes, the DEP does do periodic inspections of our facilities. He came out and, so we had a brief conversation because I knew this meeting was coming up, and interestingly, Greg Root had indicated that, it's really one of the better sites that he goes to visit. I think it's probably because of its profile right there on Parkerville Road. We don't have the luxury of having it set back in the woods somewhere like a lot of towns do. So it's readily observable and people are out there. So any kind of issues that come up, we get notified about it and then we act on it. So the facility is about 8 acres. And I don't have the history because I've only been here a year and a half that PAR does, and specifically Tim Thies. So he could probably speak a little better to, the ongoing monitoring that's been occurring. But what I can tell you is that generally speaking, and I'll give you a little bit about my background too. I'm a PE registered in the state. I've got about 35 years of engineering experience, most of which is working with solid waste management and landfills specifically. I've been to over 30 landfills in the state, and I've done everything from groundwater sampling, gas passive system design, active extraction system design, different kinds of caps, expansions. So I have enough experience with it to articulate a little bit about landfills. And in this case, when I look at this site specifically, the unique factors is you have a hydraulic barrier. So north is over to the right. You have a hydraulic barrier from this facility to the school building, the existing and the proposed school building, which is to the west of the landfill. Generally speaking, flow goes to the northeast, which is, again, off to the right of the site. So, as I was saying, the hydraulic barrier is where this wetland that Mark pointed out. And that generally flows and forms a stream, and then off it goes in this direction, which is the northeast. Okay, that's right there. And there's that stream where it goes off. If you look at some of the older mapping, you will actually see a wetland in this area, which apparently had been filled over the years. But this forms a little layer of protection between the landfill and the school building. It's a natural barrier, as we like to say. And generally speaking, as you can see, you've got this stream that flows over to the Sudbury the reservoir, as well as this stream, and everything's going to the northeast. So any superficial level flows would have a tendency to flow in that northeast direction, which is not in the direction of the school building. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. Generally, that's really about it. We do try to, go above and beyond when we get our complaints and deal with them as quickly and responsibly as we can. And so that's it for me. With that, I'll turn it over on the history of the landfill, as well as the monitoring and ongoing monitoring to Tim Thies, who's been involved with the town for a number of years.
Thanks, Bill. So, like Bill mentioned, my name's Tim Thies. I am what's called a third-party inspector. So in Massachusetts, these closed landfills, there's a lot of them around the state. The Mass DEP requires that they be inspected every year by what's called a third-party inspector. So I have a certification from the state as a third-party inspector. So I go out here on an annual basis and I do an inspection of the landfill. And what that means is that basically I walk the perimeter of the landfill. I walk down into the wetlands. I walk across the landfill, basically that whole playing field, I crisscross that whole playing field. And we do a visual inspection of the entire landfill. And what we're looking for are, like Bill mentioned, things that might be considered deficiencies. Places where the protective cover that we call the cap is that membrane plus all of the soil above it. We look for places where that might be maybe eroding, or maybe like an animal has burrowed through it. We look for those kinds of things. We look for damage to things like the monitoring wells that we monitor on an annual basis. We look for damage to the soil gas probes that we sample on a quarterly basis. So we're looking for anything that might suggest that the landfill cap is not performing as it's supposed to be, or that any of our monitoring equipment out there is not performing or is damaged. If we find it, first thing we do is we bring it to the town's attention, and then we write a report that goes to the state, and with that report we provide a corrective action plan. We've been doing this for the town now since about 2000, and in that time the only deficiencies we've identified was a little bit of erosion at the top, which the town repaired, and an ongoing issue is just animals burrowing through the side slopes of the hill. We find those burrow holes and we fill them in. So those are really the only deficiencies we've identified through our inspections over the last 5 or 6 years. What we also do, in addition to the actual inspections, we do those on an annual basis. What we also do on an annual basis is we go out and we sample the groundwater monitoring wells that are out there. And there's actually 6 monitoring wells around the landfill. We sample those for a whole laundry list of contaminants, right? And we have the sample sent to a lab, we get the data back, we review the data, and we provide all of that data to the state as well. That data includes, or I should say what we sample for, includes things like metals, volatile organic compounds, basic water chemistry, things like pH, alkalinity, things like that, as well as other, not necessarily contaminants, but other minerals that might be in there, like chlorides, iron, manganese, sodium, that might be in the groundwater. So like I said, we collect all the samples on an annual basis, we have them analyzed, and we report that to the state. In the 6 years or so that we've been doing this, we have not found anything in the groundwater that is particularly alarming, right? Most of the things that we sample for have come back non-detect, meaning that the concentrations were so low the lab couldn't detect them. The things we mostly find in our samples are things like iron. Iron is very, it's present in groundwater, anywhere on any site. It's very common down gradient of landfills. A lot of metal gets buried in old landfills like this, so we see a lot of iron in the groundwater. Iron is naturally occurring, so we see it in groundwater just anywhere where we sample. Sodium, chloride, we find those in the samples as well. That could be attributed to the landfill, could also just be attributed to road salt, right? We see that in wells a lot, impacts from road salt. We have found one VOC, which is a volatile organic compound. In all of the samples that we've collected, we've only ever found one VOC, and it's at a very, very low concentration, much lower than what the state regulates for that particular compound. So generally speaking, the groundwater quality in the samples that we've collected has been generally pretty good. There seems to be some impact from the landfill, but it's generally very, very low. And like I said, we've only ever found one VOC, and some of those metals, iron, chlorides, and sodium. We also do, on an annual basis, we sample 2 surface water locations. Pointer. Thank you. So we sample a surface water sample location right around here, and then as this stream trails off and remerges with Parkerville Road off of the page, we collect a sample there as well. And again, we sample it for the same suite of analyses that we sample the groundwater for, and much like the groundwater, we have not found much in there other than iron, chlorides, sodium, things like that. And then finally, we do on a quarterly basis, the landfill is ringed with gas vents and soil gas probes that we go out there on a quarterly basis, and we measure the landfill gases coming out of those vents and in the probes, right? And landfill gases generally mean methane. Methane is the most common. We measure carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and oxygen, right? And again, in the 6 years that we've been doing this, I don't think we've ever had a hit of methane in any of the samples that we've collected. Carbon monoxide has been present, but I think very low. Oxygen is generally in a normal level for oxygen. So the gas sampling has gone, I would say, pretty well over the last 5 or 6 years that we've been doing it. No real cause for alarm with the gas sampling that we've done. We go back a little bit, just a little bit about the history. I probably should have started with that. The landfill was started around 1930, in the early 1930s, and it was used as a landfill into the 1970s. And it was mostly what we call municipal solid waste, used for town trash. It was not, to our knowledge, it was not an industrial landfill. It was not, they weren't taking in liquid waste from industrial activities as far as we know. Mostly municipal solid waste going into that landfill, which is a good thing, because those tend to be, of landfills, those tend to be the best of the worst, if you will. No landfill is good, but municipal solid waste landfills are much better than hazardous waste landfills, much better than industrial landfills, that kind of thing. So it was closed in the 1970s, and then it was capped in the late 1990s, about 1999 to 2002 was the capping process. So when the town capped the landfill back then, they did a pretty rigorous investigation of the groundwater, the surface water, and the soil around the landfill. They identified the old limits of the landfill, and then they hired an engineering consultant to do the landfill capping design based on that data, based on the data they get back. They did a risk analysis to identify what the right kind of cap would be for that landfill, and that's what they implemented here. So there's quite a bit of study and engineering that was done when they did cap this landfill back in 1999.
Part of the project also includes efforts of sustainability, and we've talked a little bit about it. The heating system will be a geothermal heat pump system. So basically we are looking to put about 60 wells in. It'll be a closed system. We're not drawing water out, but we're using the temperature of the groundwater. We're 600 feet down to chill the pipes and get it back into the school. And it is an extremely efficient system, and is probably, we're at the edge of technology on some of these. I know one is, this be a big geothermal project in Framingham, and I know there's a school in Wellesley that's doing one, and there have been a couple others that have utilized these systems. To know, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts building group that we utilize the funding for does not permit us to use natural gas for a heating source. So the building will be all electric, with one exception. We still can use natural gas for a generator, or we can use propane. And the other exception is if we have science labs, we need to supply gas to those labs. More than likely, If we have those facilities within the school, we could do it with propane. So there'll be no natural gas. So the system will be all electric. We have met with National Grid and gone through the system with them. The system itself is more expensive than the next level, but typically they see savings of about $50,000 a year in your electric costs, and the operation costs are far less costly to the town. We'll be able to document this further. We're just at the beginning stages. The areas here there's 2 or 3 locations for the fields. One is the orange one, which is out in the field area, and the others are in the front and on the side of the school. And we need to work this out with the Board of Health as to where these are and make sure what we're doing works. There has been some discussions about, on the financial side, that part of this is a rebate from the Commonwealth through their Mass Save project, and that rebate is about $1 million. Mass Save is money that's set aside. It's their commitment, and they make the commitment early to make this available to us. The other rebate is a $4 million rebate by the government. Actually, it works through the IRS. If you buy an electric vehicle or you put in a geothermal system in your own house, which you can do, you get rebates from the IRS as tax deductions. The municipality couldn't take those, but under the latest revisions to the laws last year, they tossed those rebates to municipalities, and it goes through the IRS. There are some who will say that we'll never get them. Right now it's the law. It was passed by Congress, and only Congress can remove it. So it's in our budget. We do have a second alternative if we find that it doesn't work that way. But right now, this is the best direction that we can take it. If you add those benefits, the cost of the system is equal to the cost of the second choice. The rebates from the utilities go way down on the second choice, and there is no federal. There's also a benefit to this system that by doing a net zero building, which this is an intricate part of it, we get extra points from the mass building group. So it goes to, we get refunds through our increased payments from the state. So there is a benefit to this system. Do you want to go back a slide? Here, on this slide, you'll note that potentially we're adding 3 monitoring wells in front of the school. Right now, the school is about 290 feet from that monitoring well, up gradient, and everything flowing the wrong direction. So we don't anticipate any issues with the groundwater up near the school, but as an added protection, we could put in some monitoring wells right there and do an annual test and make sure that what we're seeing is not concerning. And I think that's just an added protection. Under the school and under the foundation, there'll be a vapor barrier between the ground and the bottom of the foundation. Also, under the foundation, we'll be putting in both a system that will draw water out from underneath the foundation so that we don't have high groundwater that comes up too close. And we'll have a radon type system that will pull out any radon or other gases that might be there. So we're adding some extra protection. Is it 100% needed? Probably not. But we have had groundwater situations in the other schools. That's necessary. I think the wells are necessary just so that we can continue to monitor it. And the radon and gas is something that should be there anyway. They're not particularly high cost, but they're not there now. So if at some point we rethink this whole project and we want to use the existing Neary building, you're never going to have other than the wells outside, you're really never going to know what's going on underneath that building until we rip it down and really determine that. And I think that was what pulled me into, hey, this site works. It's worked for us for 50 years. It'll work for us for another 50 with these added protections. And one final thing that I'll comment on the landfill. Bill and I have had a couple discussions that we may be putting together a future town meeting article next year to really set up a management plan. Right now, the landfill is owned by the school department, and it shouldn't be. We should transfer that particular piece of land out of the title of the school department and put it into the title of the town under the auspices of the DPW. And I think we should, at the same time, put together just a program of management that's set in concrete so that we don't lose sight of what needs to be done every year, who's it's being reported to, and making sure that we have set up a program that works. And included in that is the recreation department, who has a lot of activities up on that field. They should be part of this program as well. And I think that then wraps that landfill into its own category so that we as a town can continue to monitor it and make sure what's happening there doesn't affect anything downstream. And it should have very close to zero effects on the school with all the added protections. The last two slides I'll just give to Larry to talk about, and then after that we'll open it up to questions.
Thanks all. Can you hear me on this? Oh, great, okay. So we've done a couple of views of the proposed building, and as everybody is probably aware, there's a lot of work to go. We've done, usually think of 25 to 30% to get to kind of where we are today, and should the town approve the project in May, then we would move forward with the next series of rounds of further development, further studies, investigations, engineering, etc., all of which would then feed into a set of construction documents which would go out to bid and eventually for construction. So part of the way there, but a long ways to go. And we wanted to sort of show the building in its proposed location, which, as Mark was indicating, we initially thought, well, why don't we put it out on the field and just flip-flop the two? But as we went through the engineering studies, we found that that was really going to be an onerous situation. And with the good work of the school department to determine that we could actually reallocate the students out of the existing Neary building for the 2 years of construction. And hopefully some of you guys heard that discussion Thursday of last week. They went through in some detail that sort of intern condition. What that means is we have an empty site. We can take down the existing building. We can do all the checks that Mark was indicating. Let's just double check and make sure the soils underneath the existing building are all as expected, and do the work reasonably clean without students and worrying about students and construction happening in the same area, and then get the building open in one piece. It actually shortens our construction period. Oftentimes we're building a new building, waiting the students start school in the new building, then you tear down the old building, you take it and you rebuild all the site work and do all those things. And that sort of extends your construction period and means the kids are living in a construction site usually for about 2.5 to 3 years. I will say that we have done a couple of geothermal systems. We did the project in Acton for the Acton-Boxborough Regional School System, the Boardwalk campus as it's now known. We put geothermals all in the back along, if you know that building, near the train track in the center of West Acton. It essentially operates very much like you probably have seen, and many of your neighbors may be putting in the heat pump systems. You've got a unit inside your house, and then an exterior condensing unit that sits out on a little pad. You've probably seen a bunch of those that are happening. Well, instead of that little pad sitting out there, you're actually running the fluid, in this case it's water with glycol in it, down into the ground. As Mark says, it goes about 600 feet. It's exchanging either heat or cooling. So the ground in those areas is usually about 50, 55 degrees. So in the winter, you're pulling heat out of the ground, and that heats your building through your heat pump. So that little system is still the same. It's in the building. It's much bigger scale, but essentially the same technology. And then in the summer, you're reversing that, and you're sending your hot air or your hot cooling loop down into the ground, and it takes it from 70 degrees, 80 degrees, and takes it down and brings it back up at 55 degrees, and that's how you cool the building. And the nice thing is, schools are now being air conditioned, which they have historically not been. And as many of you know, with the sort of shoulder seasons being adjusting, shall we say, there's more and more times in September and in June where it's really tough on kids in an air-conditioned building. And so the system allows you to have air conditioning in addition to heating, which is a great thing, but it also, as Mark says, improves the energy efficiency of the building, brings it way down. If we did not do a geothermal system, you'd go to what's known as an air source heat pump. That's similar to what people are putting in their houses, and you have essentially a condensing cooling unit that sits up on the roof and does that same exchange of heat and cooling. So those are all intended. There's also, we are typically following, if anyone knows, the LEED building system put out by U.S. Green Building Council. Our goal is to get as high as that as possible. Right now we're tracking Silver Plus, which is sort of the kind of entry level, as Mark is saying. But our goal is to put in all healthy materials. The other advantage that the newer approach to schools is we have much more ventilation going into the classrooms. That's your phone, not mine. Somebody's phone. In any event, so again, the old style schools, you relied on the windows to provide fresh air. We all know the windows get shut in October and they get opened in April. And so in between, you're sort of cycling the same air. And if you've been in those kind of spaces and you start to feel drowsy, that's because oftentimes the CO level is going up, CO2 level is going up. And it doesn't take much to make everybody feel a little drowsy. So a lot of times kids are feeling that. What we do now is you bring fresh air in. The air is not actually tempering the space. That's being done through this ground source heat system. But you're providing air, and it's fresh air, and it's driven by monitors in the room that when the CO2 level goes up, the air starts moving. And so you're getting a much healthier building indoor environment for students. And it really, from what we understand, the research is it really helps the kids to focus on what they're doing, sort of sleeping in the back of the class. Supposedly goes down. I can't speak about the other things that bring that about. But those are all general goals to improve the quality of the learning environment for the students.
Okay, now, at this point, I'll just ask one question, and then if it gets clarified, I'll turn it over to any questions from the audience. I've said a lot of things. Is there anything one of the professionals wants to correct me on? Did I say something wrong or need expansion of it? I have to do that because I'm not an engineer, nor am I an architect. So thank you. Any questions from the audience? If you could, if you want to come down and speak into the microphone. If not, yell it out to me and I'm going to repeat it up here.
It's probably higher than I'd like. Thank you. You've done a lot of work. I appreciate that. But I'm a person that likes to see definitions when you're using terms that has to do with a plan. When it says sanitary landfill, you should spell out what that means. And same with municipal solid waste. I mean, if you go to DEP's website, that's what it says. So I urge you to define that. I do have the 2023 study that was done, evaluation, that was done on the landfill. And it was mentioned that there were several wells missing for monitoring. Had they been replaced? I think there were 6 or 7 to the northeast.
Sure, so we are in the process right now of replacing those 6 what you are referring to are 6
Yes.
gas monitoring points. And so we are in the process of replacing those.
Could you show on a map where they are?
Sure. So do you see these sort of orange gold dots?
Yes.
These are the soil, we call them soil probes. These are what we use to take measurements of the landfill gas. So this one here, this one we weren't able to identify. Sometimes these are all flush with grade, meaning that when they were installed, they just have a cap over them right at grade. And what happens over time with these, and it happens at a lot of landfills, through mowing and maintenance of the landfill, sometimes a mower will hit them, sometimes they'll just get buried over time and you won't be able to find them. And so we have, and I forget the exact number, but we have about 12.5 spots around the landfill where we have these soil probes, and we were unable to find about 6 of them. We did go back later and we found a couple more. They were buried and we were able to find them. And so we're in the process of replacing a couple, mostly along this edge on Parkerville is where we're replacing them. They go all the way down here as well. So these are not the only places though that we monitor for landfill gas. We also monitor at these gas vents. These are these blue circles. And we also monitor at the wells themselves. When we pop open the well to do the sampling of the well, we will measure landfill gas in that well as well. We'll take measurements for it as well.
All right, and the follow-up question to that is if you put the site of the landfill on the site of the school with the wetlands, right, this one here, with the wetlands in the April 2024, I think it was April, the one I copied anyway, it did show ponding in a wetland, which would be southeast on a map. So is that been eliminated? Because I think it's still there, at the base of the landfill.
I think what you're referring to is there was a spot right here.
No, I'm talking about there was a pond, a wetland, at the base of the landfill.
Oh.
Right there.
This one here?
Yes.
Yeah, we can go back to.
I think it was June 24.
Stand by for a minute, and sorry, I'm gonna get everybody dizzy.
Right. I think, is this the one we're going to be using for town? No, you don't have to answer that. But I think the landfill needs to be highlighted in that plan right there.
Sure. So
For
this
a
is,
town meeting, so everyone knows where it is. And it says that it's capped. I think we need to also say that it's unlined. That's why we're also monitoring it. Because we're gonna spend a lot of time. I'm sorry to be taking up your time, and this isn't directed at anyone. Someone that sat at the Board of Selectmen's table for almost 15 years. I was unaware of this until about 2 years ago. So I thank all of you for your work, but I think clarity would help at a town meeting.
sure.
So impose the landfill on that map there with the configuration of the new school, which is on there, but it's difficult to see, highlighted, so individuals will understand what you're doing now. How many parking spaces are there? Because it looks like a different design.
Sorry, I believe we have 100 to 120, but I can get back to you with that number.
No, I don't need it, but I'll ask it. So thank you.
And I don't believe, oh, yes, what you're seeing there is the old site with the new building shown overlaid, and then on the...
But the new building, you're removing the old building and you're putting the new building. So what I'm
Correct.
suggesting is the wetland, new building, and highlight the landfill
Yes, we can...
on the
we can-
wetland map.
We can certainly do that.
It would be helpful.
Tim, is there a difference between a sanitary landfill and a municipal landfill? Or is that just a term DEP uses?
So a sanitary landfill is generally considered to be a municipal solid waste landfill, meaning that the only trash that goes in there is basically what you, is picked up at your curb, like curbside trash. It generally excludes things like industrial waste, commercial waste, medical waste. We don't put medical waste in landfills, hazardous waste, things like that. So generally sanitary landfill is a bit of an older, antiquated term. We still use it because that's how a lot of these old landfills are identified. But it generally means it's a municipal landfill. It's what your household trash goes to.
Any other questions?
Bob Majorana, 12 Parkerville. Tim, when you tested the water, you found arsenic, cadmium, 1,4-dioxane.
Correct.
Those occur naturally in nature?
The metals that you listed, arsenic, cadmium, I'm sorry, what was the other one?
Was it 1,4-dioxane?
So arsenic and cadmium are naturally occurring elements. 1,4-dioxane is not. So when I mentioned earlier that we had measured 1 VOC, that 1 VOC is 1,4-dioxane.
So that had to come from the dump.
Correct. We suspect that that's
So it's
where it came from.
leaching. It's leaching into the groundwater. We know that, right?
So yes, we do know that.
What's the longevity of the cap?
So the caps were designed for 30 years, but that's not to say that this cap won't last many, many more years. That's why we do the monitoring, that's why we do the inspections, to make sure that the cap integrity remains in place.
And then at some point it's going to go, we have to fund a new cap.
Potentially.
Well,
And I say, but
the school is 50 years, right? The longevity of the school. So we're going to need a new cap, right? Which is really an expense.
so on these old municipal landfills that are capped now, I'm not aware of any that their cap has degraded to the point where they've needed to be recapped. Not with these engineered caps that are on them right now.
Okay. The extra excavation around footprint, you're going to have to make a bigger footprint and disturb the groundwater. Does that have any impact on the groundwater under the landfill?
So I'm not a hydrogeologist, but if we're pumping, are you saying if we're pumping groundwater beneath
If you're
the,
doing anything around the new footprint, could that affect the groundwater underneath the landfill?
it seemed unlikely, because the groundwater from the landfill is moving in a north-northwest direction,
Yeah.
right? So, as is the school, so it's all converging on this wetland complex down here. So we're effectively on the other side of that convergence.
The water is moving northward, groundwater.
Mhm.
You notice about 20 houses on Parkville Road on wells. We have no town water. I asked the Board of Health, what do you think? Should we be concerned that there are contaminants in the water? They're testing around the site. Do we need additional testing around for the houses? I was on the building committee for this school, and we were supposed to, when we put the sidewalk in, get the connection for water, town water, and it never happened. So now we're in this situation where we may have to test additionally beyond paying extra for a school that frankly isn't needed. So I'm asking the Board of Health, is there something the town should do for us, especially around wells, in light of the landfill and how it could be impacted?
In my opinion, the level at what they're testing at the annual kind of regular interval, I find that appropriate personally. Of course.
But the whole notion of having to build a school where you have to test in perpetuity is like nuts. I don't understand that. And you're going through cartwheels to make it the site even buildable. So, I mean, that's my only comment on, we're concerned, my neighbors are concerned. And you know, when you test for VOCs, a lot of us do our own testing. But for hard water, for, you know, E. coli stuff. When you start to test for VOCs and stuff, that gets very expensive. And we have to do that now. So this is an issue for us, and I just want everybody to know. Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
Hello, my name's Dean Vester, 24 Overlook Drive. Thank you for the detailed presentation, very interesting. Just a reflection on the comment about building the school and the need for increased cost of monitoring. The school, by the way, is already there. So if we do nothing, you made some interesting remarks in your introduction that spoke to the age of the building and the future cost of maintaining it because of its age, in excess of 50 years. It might be an interesting contrast for the meeting to consider informing the town about what is the cost of doing nothing. That is to say, if we keep the old building, eventually rewire it, put the roof on it, and do many other things, I suspect, just to keep it livable, which will probably be very expensive.
I think I could take a stab at that. We did analyze that during our studies a year ago. That was one of the studies that the state required us to do, was to basically renovate and put the school back together. And several things that you need to understand. The school is full of block walls. And I'll go through the litany. It's not currently sprinkled. It is not handicapped accessible. It does not meet the educational needs of the town, and each year of delay makes that more and more difficult. It does not meet the current needs for security. So and it doesn't meet the energy codes. The energy codes, if any renovation, even potentially repairing the roof, which it needs a new roof now. If we don't do that, and even if we do that, we are subject to all the other codes. We'd have to make it handicapped accessible. We would have to meet the energy code, which means we need a new facade, new insulation, new windows. We had no air conditioning system in that building. So the air quality in that building is 50 years old. The two schools I was involved in years ago were in Framingham, and one school was 125 years old. That was the best building to work with. It's where the Danforth Museum now is on the town common. We could keep that building and work the magic in all the new systems. We can't do that with Neary. We found out that the cost to renovate that school is just about as high as building something new. Not quite, but at the end of the day, we would have nothing to secure ourselves that what's under that school is safe. And that was a concerning thing to me. So we have studied it. I think some of that information is on the website, but we can go through that if needed at any point in time. I think people just need to realize the code issues, because the building's 50 years old.
Absolutely.
The code issues kick in because its assessed value is relatively low, and the law, I think it's 25% of the assessed value, you're required to bring it up to code. Put in a new electrical system, all of that.
But, thank you. And if the alternate cost of doing nothing is almost the same as building a nice brand new school, with all the careful planning and consideration we're taking into account, I think that's very important to make sure that is clearly spelled out in the town meeting, because there's an awful lot of money going to be essentially thrown away if we don't do the right thing. And if there are other concerns regarding water contamination, then we should further develop responses to those, especially for the local neighbors.
Thank you.
You just said that this school does not currently meet the educational needs of its students. I'm wondering how you can say that. Do you know that it's currently ranked 13th in the state among almost 1,000 schools?
I understand what you're saying. When the music program has to store all of its equipment in the hallways,
Again,
When-
I understand what you're saying.
when I understand, and I'll make my point. When there's little or no ability to collaborate between classrooms because they're fixed walls, when special needs aren't, this design places the special needs right at the grade level, right at the classrooms. We're finding that model doesn't work as well, and it causes us to spend more. Now, I'm not an educational person, but I'm answering an education question. Yes, our teachers have been successful at providing a terrific education, but the facilities are dragging us down. And that's the case in a lot of schools. A lot of schools are in tougher shape, I get it. But I think as a town, we can do much better.
Better than number 13?
Let's get it up to number 10.
Woodward is at number 10,
I
actually.
get it. The facilities do play a part.
I think that everyone in this town probably agrees that there are issues with that building. The school itself, with the teachers, the community, the students, are what make it a top-ranked school in the state. Obviously, there's issues with that building. But let's be clear about this. From the very beginning, the building committee, which was originally, I think, the Neary Exploration Committee, renamed to a building committee, was tasked with working with the MSBA, whose goal is to spend money on an addition, renovation, or new build. Right? So I'm concerned that serious due diligence was not given to creative thinking, And how do we use the school space that we have? We know that Trotter is underutilized. We know that there's extra space at Finn. And I'm not convinced that the committee, although you've done a lot of work over a long period of time, the goal was to add on, renovate, or build new. The goal was not to make our schools the best or consider what is the school space that we have and how do we use it to its most efficient state.
I appreciate your comment. I think I would say a couple things to it, and I won't speak for the educational side of it. The building committee, I wasn't on the earlier committees. There have been several committees that worked with MSBA, they worked with the student population and going through that route. And I think the town learned a lesson, because when we did it 30 years ago with the high school and Woodward and Trotter, it was the same group that did the demographic studies and then went into the building. That wasn't the case here. That work was done prior to the building committee even coming on board. And I'll disagree with the role of MSBA. I don't see them as forcing an issue. There are programs that you can renovate a school. And we utilize those programs in town. And I think we, as a committee, had a blank slate when we started, and we went through renovating it. And I basically used 4 tenets that we as a committee came up with, which were the basis of what our decision would be. And A, that the school had to be safe. B, that the school had to provide a healthy environment so that our students could excel and our staff could teach to their finest. C, we had to meet or exceed the educational plan, and that was derived by the community through the school department. We were handed that educational plan, which was approved by the state. And D, we had to look at sustainability and taking away from the schools the cost to operate these schools. And it's been my pet peeve for 40 years that we pay too much in energy, we pay too much in maintaining these schools, we pay too much on cost to operate. Where if we reduce those things, we're going to have more to educate our kids. So that goes to the excellence. So I have always tested my decisions based on safety, based on sustainability, based on the educational program, and based on our ability to have a healthy environment. And one other point, we have an excellent staff. We are entering a period and have already entered it where it's going to be very difficult to find qualified teachers. Like many businesses, the colleges are not coming out with certified teachers. We need to consider that the way we can attract the best and the brightest to our schools is to have a facility that meets all of our needs and allows the teachers to excel. I was a teacher 50 years ago, and I looked at some schools and made the comment, I don't want to teach there. That's not a school I want to teach at. And that's true now. We need to get the best and the brightest. And if our facilities are overcrowded and our facilities are having difficulty meeting the educational needs of our kids, we're going to have difficulties in attracting the best and the brightest.
I'm not aware that there's any schools currently that are overcrowded. But when you're talking about the overall maintenance costs and what was the operational costs of the school, let's just be clear. We have 4 schools now. You're going to rebuild Neary as a building almost twice its size, but we're still going to have essentially 4 schools. One, you're intending to decommission as a school, so you're moving the line item for that operational budget out of the school budget and into the town budget. But the taxpayers are still paying that operational budget for 4 schools. And we have been hearing for years in this town, we need more affordable housing. Look at what we went through a year ago with the MBTA issue. When you're going to tax people out of their houses because of building a school like this, in addition to the other programs that we need to complete in this town, I don't want to hear anybody talk to me about affordable housing. In life, we all have 2 buckets in any decision that we make. You have the want bucket and you have the necessary bucket. Having this beautiful school, that would be wonderful. And if we were all multimillionaires, we'd have no problem with it. It's not a necessity. It goes in the want bucket. And issues like our town roads and some of the other things that are on the agenda that are also going to increase our taxes are in the necessary bucket. I have listened to people predict what our taxes are going to be going out 5 years or 10 years based on this, in addition to the standard tax increase that we have every year. A week and a half ago, we passed a tax increase of 7.4%. The modeling that you're giving us now, going out for our standard operational budgets, are nowhere near 7.4%. 5 years ago, would that modeling you have shown this year being 7.4%? I highly doubt it. So if you can't have taken 5 years ago and given me a true estimate of what my increase was going to be this year, how do you think I should believe you when you're telling me this year what my increase is going to be in 5 or 10 years? It doesn't work. Again, wonderful, beautiful school, appreciate all the time and effort, but this is a want and not a necessity given the cost and the fiscal climate that we have.
Thank you, but let me just answer with one related comment. I also am a senior in this town. And the reason I came to this town 45 years ago was for 2 reasons. One, I like the town, but 2, it had a good school system, and to me that was critical. If I put my house on the market, I've always felt, and I made this argument 30 years ago with Algonquin, that a strong and good school system attracts people. And the day I sell my house, I will sell it quicker, and I will sell it possibly for more money. And to me, that's worth it. I could barely afford to move to this town, but somehow I've made it work for 45 years, and I'll make it work for another 45. I get what you're saying, but I think of all the things in this town, we have always stressed education. And it's worked for my family, it works for my daughter who presently teaches at the high school. And I won't vary from that. I think it is money well spent. Anything else?
Stan Show, 7 School Street.
Can you turn the mic just a bit up?
Yeah,
Perfect.
is that better?
Yes.
My 3 children went through the schools here. I think one of the reasons the schools were so good is because they were small, community-based schools. This is a 600-student school, which I think is going to wipe out that advantage completely. So from that standpoint, I just am scratching my head saying, you're taking a school system that really has been working well. I think number 13 in the state is really, it says something about the schools. And putting a 600-student school in there. The only argument I've ever heard for putting all the grades together is that the transitions are hard. But the transitions are hard for the parents who don't want to have to pick up their kids at different schools. We have buses, so I think we could go back to a scenario where people put their kids on the bus, or the schools put their kids on the bus. I just want to reinforce the point of taking Finn and making it, decommissioning Finn and making it a town property. What happens with that type of thing is that the town feels an obligation to fill up that space. I mean, one of the reasons the initial committee didn't want to use Finn as a school was that it needed work. And so the $100 million that we're putting into this school, I think the estimate was that Finn was going to need almost as much work. And so the question really comes down to who's going to pay for that and when are we going to get that bill? So that's another issue. I don't think honestly that moving that building to the town. We still have that old, I forget what it's called, that old brick building next to St. Matthew's over there that we've been fighting for 40 years over what to do with it. Adding another building to that category just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Having said all of that, it would almost seem like if we spent the money on Finn to fix that school toward Neary, we would solve all our problems. I don't see why that wasn't considered as an option, but we don't need that extra building in the town. I mean, it's been said the senior center could move down to Finn, but they didn't want to. They're happy where they are. They're close to downtown. And honestly, I have to take exception. I'm a senior in town as well. If this really comes down to you feeling like you're going to make more money selling your house because you have this brand new school, I think you need to really consider the future of the town rather than your own financial interest here. I would, the amount of infrastructure that needs repair with the town. I don't know if you've ever read the advisory committee report, but there's a huge amount of infrastructure in the town. You drive from Marlborough into Southborough, that road is completely potholes, and they've patched it so many times, it's almost like you can't even patch it anymore. It's just awful. And that is a town-owned road, from my understanding. It's not something the state is going to pay. We can't afford to do it. I mean, realistically, this is a poor town. We had a volunteer fire department almost right up until I moved to town, which was in the 90s. And now all of a sudden we're spending money on police lieutenants. We've got a police palace, a fire palace. All of these big building projects, I'm not sure we can afford all this. So we do need to do something. And your point about, that Neary is not really functional at this point in time. I think that's quite bad. But adding another decommissioned property to the town, maintenance, if you will, that needs a lot of repair, it needs a lot of rebuilding, if you will. And even if we did all that, it's still a school. And it's probably one of the best locations in the town for a school. So I think that the committee that initially evaluated it, and I did attend the meeting when they were discussing how they made their decision, I think it was one person that walked through Finn and said, we don't want to fix this. But it's a nice school, it's got a full-size gym in it, and it's a perfect location for a school. Parking, I think could be potentially an issue there, but I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to support this, and there's a part of me that says, Southborough is a small town, we should have small schools. So I don't know. Thanks for listening.
No, I appreciate your comments. When my kids went through the schools, Neary was a 4-grade school. It was 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it was a slightly different model than it was Neary. It was Finn, Neary, and then you went to Woodward as the junior high. I personally agree that the transitions are tough. I have one grandson in the schools now, he's going to Neary. I have another just entering the school. So I'm probably becoming more familiar with them than I ever thought I would be. I think the 4-grade school works. It works as it's designed. Those 2-story wings out the back, it's 1 grade on one floor, 1 grade on the other floor. You've got 4 separate class areas. So it gives you the efficiency of operating one school for the 4 grades. Regarding Finn, I'm not sure whether the original exploration committee dug into Finn. We did do an estimate on reusing it as a municipal building. And there was some estimates done. I think they're on our website. It will need a new roof, whether or not this program goes. And Trottier's, I think Trottier's sooner than Finn, because they're both 30 years old. The roofs are only going to last that long. So that was an expense that we're going to have to deal with, whether it's the municipal side or the school side. As far as renovating that school for municipal purposes, it's far less than it would be to add on to that school. Sections of that school are like were built too long ago and won't support a second floor. Sections of the school do support a second floor, but it's the areas we would want to maintain. It's the gym area and everything to the west of that school. Believe it or not, that's the same situation we have at Woodward. There's little available land to physically expand that school because of all the fields in back. There is a deed restriction at Woodward. I'm not sure that same deed restriction impacts Neary, but it does impact the playing fields there at Finn. So I think you'd find that we would find the cost even more higher to do a renovation at Finn. We could elect to tear down Finn if we don't want to renovate it. That's a decision of the town. Once the school department turns it over to the town, we're free and clear to do with it what we want. But right now the town has the need for additional space. It's a perfect match. I think the departments that have been looking at it are recreation. I'm trying to think of we weren't involved in the study. That was done by a separate group. I think there was a long discussion with the seniors to move their center down there, and they've decided they don't want to go that direction. But there are several departments that need the space, that we just don't have it anywhere else. But I think that study might be on the website. If not, it's on the town website somewhere.
Are you including all of these costs?
I'm sorry, I'm
I'm sorry, are you including all of these costs in your investment as for the road school building?
I think we were asked to, it's not in the project, to renovate Finn. We know what those numbers are to renovate it for municipal purposes because we were asked. But that would not be reimbursable by the state, so it's not in our cost for the school.
But is it possible to get a town meeting to represent to the taxpayers what that cost is going to be?
All we can give you is what we were given, which were the cost to renovate it for municipal purposes. There is a budget set aside for that. But the town has approved nothing on it.
So we're talking about 10 million, 20 million?
No, I think it was, I'm not sure anyone here will correct me, I think it was in the low millions to renovate that. It was a roof and some internal renovations to get it ready. I don't think it's all that big. Yes?
Yeah, Ethan Rudolupert, 189 Middle. Appreciate all your time and your professional, and it was refreshing to hear subject matter experts speak on this topic. So, great presentation, very exciting stuff. The geothermal looks awesome. I think my question is very simple on the schematic, the proposed building drawing on the roof. Any consideration for solar panels to help with that electrical load that will be taken on? Again, thank you.
I can let the architect, part of sustainability is working in some solar, and yes, we will be considering putting it there. We may even consider putting a canopy over the parking and utilize it there. So, yes. And I know there's a selectman and other people will watch. I'm a big proponent of solar. And we could put a solar farm anywhere we want in this town and attribute the power to any sources in the town. That's what net metering means. I could buy a lot somewhere in town and put a solar array and take the power off of my house. We will, when we get to that stage, we will look around. And I'll really go out in left field with my answer. If we're considering really getting behind affordable housing, why can't we have a solar site in this town that directly benefits our affordable housing? So not only can they move into a facility that they could be proud of, but their utilities will be met by the town. There are some things we could do on the solar side, but yes, we're looking at it for the school. Yes?
So yes, we're planning to put, and the state actually requires us to make the building solar ready, which means, panels can be added. Typically, we're seeing communities do that as part of a power purchase agreement. So the town is not actually paying the capital costs for the panels and the infrastructure to support the panels, or the wiring and things. What ends up happening is those are typically done by third-party, essentially vendors, and then they sell the power that's generated from that to the community at a reduced rate. So you're getting sort of the best of both worlds in the sense that you are providing space on your building. You're not having to actually invest in the cost of those panels. The other thing that we're hearing from communities, they like the fact that those companies are maintaining those panels, so it's not the folks in town who are trying to keep making sure they're working, but it's folks who do that for a living. And so most of the communities we're working with, I can only think of one community we've done that actually went out and purchased it. So from that standpoint, and as Mark said, that's typically something that gets entered into towards middle of the construction period. But oftentimes in the next round of stuff, we're having conversations to say, okay, what spaces in the roof are available for panels? And to Mark's point, so far we've got 2 projects where those power purchase agreements have included solar canopies over the parking lots. You can imagine the teachers and the families love that. Whether that continues remains to be seen, but it's all a business deal that they work out.
Robin Gunderson, 34 Glen Court, and I rise as a grandmother of a 3 and a 1-year-old here in Southborough. We followed them here. So the red lines are property lines, right? That's the property line of this
Yes.
school property. So no matter what abuts the landfill, north, south, east, west, the town still has to maintain it, right? So that's a cost we have no matter what we do to Neary.
That's correct.
Unchanged, except for the 3 proposed additional monitoring circles that were in front of the school. That would be the only cost that we don't currently incur to
Correct.
maintain it. Okay, so that's unaffected by this decision. And then the septic system is 26 years old. I know residentially they have a lifespan of about 30 years, leaching fields and septic systems. Would that be the same here, about in terms of lifespan? So within the next 5 years, we'd be looking at a new septic system
We're
here.
putting in a new one now, but you would need one. You would need one no matter what you do with the school.
Right, regardless of
Correct.
the Neary decision. So those are 2, I just wanted to separate that from this decision. And I would say we are a small town, right? I feel though that we would all agree that a thing that is necessary is that our schools, our buildings are safe and healthy. And Neary is not, is my understanding, right?
That's
It is
correct.
unsafe and it is unhealthy for our staff and our students. And that's alarming to me. And we talk about it needing a new roof, and that is past due. And that if we address the roof, then there is this cascading effect of having to meet current codes. And so we have to address the roof. I think we would, if we stuck with original Neary, we would at least have to do the roof. But then we can't stop there. There's this cascading effect of meeting all of these other needs. I don't know that that would impact the air quality though, from what I'm hearing, because we wouldn't be required to air condition the building. So, and that those costs of that cascading effect of just addressing the roof comes very close to an entirely new building that has a 50, for the next 50 years, can meet the needs of the future 1- and 3-year-old children out there. Just from a cost-effective, thinking about the future of our community, I feel like investing in the original Neary is just putting, good money after, bad money after good. I can't remember how you say that, but just, it's not an effective use of the money, the funds that we do have, or that we will be, raising going forward.
No, thank you. You're correct. And septic is going to be an issue at all of our schools within a short period of time. Trotter is reaching that 30-year magic mark. Woodward is probably the best, but Woodward is, we can't add anything to that school other than the portable classrooms for a year or two, because Woodward would be too big for its septic system, which is out on the golf course. We'd have to tear up the golf course if we can find something that perks over there. We had a tough time doing it. Finn also has a septic issue. So the septic is something we're going to be dealing with in all the schools over the next 10 years, 15 years. We're going to be dealing with roofs on every school, whether we do anything with Neary or not. Every school, Trotier's the best one. I'm sorry, Woodward is the best one. Trotier needs work. We just put out to bid $100,000 to replace that, at least put the specifications together to replace that roof. Finn is coming right along. So none of us on our committee would ignore those costs, but we looked at multiple different ways to do this. We could show you plans on adding on to Woodward. If you think we have a battle, we would have a battle with that neighborhood because it was a 2 or 3 story building up behind the school. We can't build on the land in front of that school. That's deed restricted. It can only be recreation land. And Woodward is just, it's stuck. There's just not enough land for it. Finn has some of the same similar issues. The only school that, even if we do this building, the only school that has the room to add is the new Neary. We could add on to this school. We've got plenty of land down there to do it. So we've got some capacity. I think if we look at all 4 of our school sites, I've come to the conclusion that Neary is our best site. It gives us a capacity to do all the things that need to be done. We still maintain the fields there and maintain the activities there. I just look at it in 18 different ways, and it wasn't easy to come to that conclusion.
Mark, thank you for your commentary just now. Every building needs capital repairs. I was on the Southborough Public Accessibility Committee, which is the ADA committee here in town. We did an assessment of all the buildings. Every school building in this town needs major retrofit, capital expenses, no matter what we do. The roofs, so there's a big capital list out there. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Davis, who's taken a lot of my questions over the last year, and he's followed through with every single one of them. The town of South was very lucky to have Mr. Conliffe as our DPW superintendent. He's knowledgeable, and I'm not just saying that. He speaks in a language that we all can understand, sometimes over my head, but he's very capable of speaking down to me with respect so I can understand it. And Mr. Cheese, I've worked with him probably 15 years on water tanks, and the town of Southborough, I was saying, goes for him. He's very, he listens to the town and comes back with what he feels is in the best interest of everyone. So my questions weren't directed at criticism of the site. I've had conversations with the individuals in the past. I do have a follow-up to what you said, Mark. I've known Mark for over 40 years. The management plan for the landfill, which has been discussed openly at your meetings for the last year, why wasn't that an article at town meeting so it directly goes to the DPW superintendent or the Board of Health so they can start a management plan regardless of what we do? Thank you.
I think that probably rests on my shoulders. It will go to town meeting.
No, it wasn't meant to be a criticism, Mark.
No,
I
it
think
isn't.
I think it was publicly discussed, and I would say I probably dropped the ball too because I would have written an article for it. But it seems like it's something that has to be done, regardless of what happens at that site. And it should have been done at the April town meeting. So the question if asked, we've already done it. Instead of, we're gonna do it, maybe in April or a fall town meeting. And the school, if it gets passed, they'll be moving forward. But it's unfair to a department head not to be able to work on that before this even starts.
Yeah, I think, it wasn't part of our committee's responsibility. I personally told the committee, I'll take this on. I've spoken to Bill, and yes, I think we could have put it together. But I think just taking the extra time to make sure we're doing it right, we bring recreation and we bring everyone into the table to really set this thing up right. I think it's being maintained properly
No,
now.
I'm not, that's not what my question
Right.
was. The transfer of the property
Yep,
should have happened at town meeting. The maintenance plan
it will
could have happened at.
It will be part of that article. It will be transferred out of the school department and back into the town under the auspices of the DPW, which is where it should be. I was around in the 90s. I barely remember voting it. I don't know why it was done that way, but it was. Anything else? Well, go ahead.
I just want to say I'm so thankful to the building committee 50 years ago, who built the original Neary here, and also for your service on the Board of Selectmen, and for all of the work here. We raised our girls in Sudbury, and these are high school sweethearts here, and now we all call Southborough home. And I guess what I'm hearing is that doing nothing is not an option. There's need, varying degrees of need, and that we have to take an action, and it's about taking the wisest one for our future, our shared future.
Just to quickly answer, I don't believe it's an option. It is an option. The town meeting can basically take the stance, we don't want to do this. Personally, I think that's going to expose the town to more money at some point, with potentially less reimbursement to the state. When we did Algonquin, and we did our elementary schools 30 years ago, and Algonquin was then the biggest project, we were getting a 60% rate, I think it was 58%, from the state. And some of us at that time were saying we should deal with Neary. We didn't. And now we're getting 32%, and we've had to fight for every percentage. It was far lower when we started, and we've had to fight. In the educational presentations, one of the aspects of a school is you have this corridor. I call it a dark corridor because it was when I went to elementary school, but you got a corridor and you got the classrooms all on the side. Those corridors are not space that the state is going to reimburse you for. They don't reimburse us for corridors, stairwells, stairs, storage rooms, all the facilities to make the school operate. We have to pay for those. There's no auditorium in this school. It's not one of these because the state will not reimburse it. We've pulled as much out, but the architects did a wonderful thing. We widened the corridors, and we put in those corridors areas for our STEM program, areas for class collaboration, so that it isn't just the second grade walking down their corridor to their classroom. Physically, classrooms can be brought outside into that corridor space. and utilize the STEM activities. We don't have to replicate that in everybody's room. There's a special needs area that's accessible there. We even have windows going out. I know I'm getting into a lot of detail, but our consultants wouldn't listen to us at first, but two of us on the committee kept asking, why isn't this reimbursable? This is classroom space. So finally, in our last go-around, we included that. And we don't have it in writing yet. We won't get it until another 2 weeks. But from what I'm told, we got that classified as educational space. So our efficiency of the building is lower. And that's good. So we have pushed as much as we could to get as much as we can from the state. If we delay, if we just do nothing and wait 3 years for a maintenance project, which the state will reimburse but at a far lower rate, we're going to end up paying a lot more for a lot less. And that's my concern. So I will probably speak twice at town meeting. I'll speak from the committee, whether I'm asked to talk about the landfill. That's probably where my expertise is, and I'll make a very short discussion about the wetlands. But I will stand up personally and take my time and go through the defense of how important this school is to our community. And I think people need to hear it. Just the sheer fact that we haven't cooked a meal in that school in over 25 years says something. We haven't replaced that equipment. The meals are all cooked at Trotter and vanned over to the school. Tells you that there are issues that we shouldn't be dealing with the town. Sure. Just pull the microphone up.
Sure. You make some very compelling arguments, and I guess the question I've had over the years is, because Neary's been Neary forever, and why hasn't the town ever spent the money on it? And I think the answer is they never had the money. And I guess the question to you tonight is, and you make a very forceful argument for the new school, but the question is, can we afford it? I mean, without pushing the tax rate to a point where, it's just unaffordable for the people that are living in the town, and it creates, I'm a senior, I'm retired, I don't have a mortgage, it's fine, but I'm not the typical Southborough resident. A lot of people are stretched, and the economy's not getting better, and the roads aren't getting better in town. I know that everybody's doing what they can on that, so it's not a criticism, it's just, this town doesn't have a lot of money, the nonprofits don't contribute a lot, and we don't have a lot of industry, so can we afford it?
Thank you. Some of these arguments were the exact arguments I heard 30 years ago when we brought Algonquin before the town. And there was a side issue at that point. There was a group that wanted to build their own high school, didn't want us to regionalize. We predicted that was financially a disaster to build a 400-student high school. But all those arguments were raised then, and somehow we got it done. And the bond is finally being paid off, I think, in the next year or two. Two. So those bonds are done. We put more money into Algonquin. I think Algonquin needs a new roof as well. But these are hard decisions. I get it. And the school department is roughly 60% of the municipal budget. It if I can sit here and feel good about the fact that we would reduce our transportation costs, we'll reduce our utility costs, we may see other reductions in the cost of maintaining this school, we have done a good thing. Is it enough to equate to all the savings? No. We have kicked the can on this school for 40 years. We have talked about handicapped accessibility down there, and it just has not been done. It's horribly expensive because those block walls support the roof in a lot of spaces in that building. There are just some things that we have to face. And yes, we should have done a lot of these things 30 years ago, 25 years ago. We didn't. And was that a wise decision? No, I don't think it was. But we managed to get through it. But I don't think we have a choice but to make the hard decision now. And I hope that helps. I've already looked at my own personal budget. And I'm not in a house that even meets the average of this town. But I'll find a way. It's important to me, it's important to my grandkids, even if I wasn't in the school. And I encourage the selectmen to continue to find ways that seniors can offset their tax bills. I work part-time for the state on railroad matters. But I'd love to give that up. I'd love to go back in and substitute teach in the schools. But I couldn't do it at the $100 a day that they're talking about. But I'd certainly do it if I could be paid $150 a day, and $50 got to reduce my taxes. There are ways we could help the seniors in this town, and as a town, we need to address that.
I don't think it's the seniors that are an issue. Honestly, I think the seniors in our society are the ones that are
Microphone.
supporting the I think it's more.
Excuse me, I know this is going on YouTube and whatnot. I don't think they're gonna pick up the comments, so
No,
either
they won't.
repeat it or, yeah.
Anything else? Okay, at this point, I will thank you. The website will have our slides put on the website. We may get some additional information that came out of this meeting. If you do think of a question, you can either reach any member of the building committee, or names are right there on the town website, or you can go on the nearybuilding.com site and contact our communications group, which is a separate subcommittee. We'll go ahead and get the answer to your question. So we're here. I think the next session we'll have is before planning board on the 28th, which is a Monday night? I think so. I'm terrible at dates. Unless there's anything else, I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you very much.